They promised transparency, they promised justice, but when the truth finally came knocking, they locked the doors. What if I told you the same people who once demanded the release of one of the most infamous case files in American history are now the ones fighting hardest to keep it buried? What if the real story isn't what's in those files, but who doesn't want you to see them? That's the question setting Washington on fire right now, and one congressman just ripped the lid off the silence. Dan Goldman walked into a Homeland Security Committee hearing expecting the usual long speeches, recycled talking points, and political theater. But what happened next wasn't politics. It was an ambush of truth that left the room stunned.
Proceedings, nonviolent, non-criminal immigrants pursuing legal pathways to immigrate to this country, and then illegally detaining them in horrific conditions, and even possibly deporting them despite the fact that they are here legally. You would think the committee, with jurisdiction over the Department of Homeland Security, would want to conduct oversight over the department's refusal to allow members of Congress to observe the conditions of DHS detention facilities. In fact, there is a specific statute that authorizes both Republicans and Democrats to conduct oversight over facilities that house or detain immigrants. But no, the department refuses. So we're here in the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm sure the Republican majority does not like it when this administration undermines its own authority, its own statutory authority, to conduct oversight. But no, instead of all of that, we are here talking yet again about Joe Biden. Newsflash, Joe Biden is not the president. He hasn't been the president for 7 months. So if we are going to conduct oversight here, why are we doing it about the Biden administration when this administration is literally detaining lawful permanent residents and even some U.S. citizens? And it gets worse. It's not just those masked ICE agents. There are many FBI agents who are being called away from their duties to investigate terrorism, violent gangs, child trafficking, and other crimes in order to help ICE arrest and detain immigrants with legal asylum claims, nonviolent. That makes our homeland less safe, not more safe. So we should hear from FBI Director Kash Patel about how many of his criminal investigators are being taken away from their criminal investigatory jobs, keeping Americans safe in order to help round up non-criminal immigrants trying to immigrate the right way. Some of these detainees are being held in Bureau of Prisons detention centers that are unfit for convicted criminals to stay in. We should hear from Pam Bondi about how much of the department's resources are being used to detain these nonviolent, non-criminal immigration detainees. And while they're here, we can ask them about a very pressing question. What's going on with the Epstein files? Donald Trump promised to release them. Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk and that she was going to release them in the name of transparency. Kash Patel has spent years railing against the FBI to release the files. Many of my Republican colleagues were banging on the table to release the Epstein files. But now, all of a sudden, after a months-long review, Bondi and Patel say nothing to see here, no evidence that any American would want to see about accomplices, co-conspirators, or other people involved. Yesterday, the Republicans voted against releasing the files. So what's changed? Well, we all know Donald Trump has had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He flew on his plane, he hung out at parties, spoke highly of him. And now there are many people saying that Donald Trump is included in the Epstein files. In fact, there are reporters who say that there are videos of him with topless women. Elon Musk even confirmed that Trump is blocking the release of these files because he's in them. Pam Bondi says there's nothing there, but Donald Trump even acknowledges that there is evidence there. It's just not credible. It's made up. This is a True Social post from 9:43 this morning. It is an admission that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, and the American people deserve to know whether he is or not.
Mr. Garbarino,
Mr. Chairman, I would, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11...
Gentleman is not recognized. Your time has expired.
I have a motion,
Mr. Garbarino,
Mr. Chairman.
Recognized for questioning.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion.
Thank you, Mr.
The gentleman has a motion.
Pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11, I move that the committee subpoena Pam Bondi, Attorney General of the United States, and Cash Patel, the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Mr. Chairman, motion to table.
Gentleman has a motion.
Motion to table.
Motion to table is privileged and non-debatable.
And by the end, every lawmaker there knew the question they'd been avoiding could no longer be ignored: what happened to the Epstein files? For months, the nation's been distracted by everything but the one topic that keeps coming back like a ghost: a list of names and evidence sealed away behind national security excuses. They told you there was nothing left to uncover, but Goldman wasn't buying it. He brought receipts, subpoenas, and a challenge that hit the heart of Washington's deepest hypocrisy. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: everyone swore they wanted transparency, until the moment transparency threatened them. The hearing began like every other D.C. production, microphones on, tempers rising, everyone pretending to care about oversight. The agenda said immigration, but Goldman saw something else: a chance to expose the system's selective blindness. He started by asking a question that made the committee squirm. Why was Congress holding yet another hearing about an administration that hadn't existed for 7 months while ignoring the one running the Department of Homeland Security right now? Why were they fixated on political ghosts while real abuses were happening in plain sight? The silence that followed said everything. Then Goldman turned the conversation somewhere no one expected: to the missing Epstein files. The same files once promised to the public in the name of transparency. The same files that mysteriously vanished into silence once the people in power changed. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm tone carried something far heavier: evidence. But before that explosion, he painted a picture that every American deserves to see. Behind the headlines, the Department of Homeland Security had been detaining nonviolent immigrants, even lawful residents, in filthy, overcrowded facilities. Families pulled from courtrooms mid-hearing, people seeking asylum legally, treated like criminals. Oversight visits from members of Congress were blocked, even though federal law requires those doors to stay open. That's not oversight. That's obstruction. And the most powerful voices in the room, the ones who claimed to stand for law and order, said nothing. Goldman looked around and saw it clearly. Congress had turned oversight into a sideshow. While families suffered in silence, the same lawmakers screaming for accountability were using the word as a prop. That's when he dropped the line that changed everything. If this committee actually cared about oversight, we'd start by asking why the Epstein files are still sealed. You could feel the energy shift. A few smirks disappeared, papers shuffled, someone coughed. No one wanted to go there, but he did. He reminded them of every promise made to the American people. Years ago they said the files would be released, a full accounting, no more secrets. Pam Bondi herself, now a familiar name from those impeachment days, publicly declared she had the Epstein files on her desk and would release them in the spirit of transparency. Another official at the center of power, who once attacked the FBI for its secrecy, joined the chorus, demanding full release, accountability, exposure. Their supporters cheered. Drain the swamp, they said. But then something changed. The moment those same people had access to the files, the noise stopped. No statements, no updates, no outrage, just silence. Bondi's desk went quiet. The former FBI critic turned government insider suddenly decided there's nothing to see here. Goldman wasn't having it. He didn't accuse anyone. He just laid out the contradiction so plainly that it couldn't be ignored. You demanded release when it was convenient. You buried it when it wasn't. For months, journalists and investigators whispered the same question: why the sudden silence? After a so-called months-long review, officials claimed there was no new information, that the public wouldn't find anything meaningful. Yet the vote that followed told another story. The House majority, the same group that once shouted transparency, voted against releasing the files. You could almost hear the collective gasp outside Washington, and that's when the speculation began. Whispers online about names redacted, videos unreleased, testimonies quietly removed. Reporters claiming they'd seen references to powerful men, businessmen, politicians. A few even alleged that there were private videos featuring high-profile figures at Epstein's properties. It wasn't proof, it was rumor. But rumor is oxygen in a vacuum of truth. Then came the posts, screenshots spreading like wildfire. One tech billionaire hinting that someone powerful was blocking the release. Social media lit up with questions. Why hide them if there's nothing there? Who benefits from the silence? Bondi said there was nothing there, yet even she avoided releasing the documents. The circle closed tighter, the story got murkier, and the public lost sight of what mattered most. The files still aren't public. Goldman brought the focus back. This wasn't about one man or one rumor. It was about systems of power. He pointed out how the same agencies that claim they're too busy to provide oversight reports somehow have the time and manpower to detain harmless immigrants in secret raids. He reminded the room that agents pulled off anti-terrorism assignments to help ICE arrest people whose only crime was paperwork delays. Every agent taken off a criminal investigation to help enforce politics, he said, is an agent not stopping actual crimes. The irony was crushing. Law enforcement resources being used to punish the powerless while protecting the powerful, and that's when Goldman went for it. He demanded a full accounting of how much time, money and manpower had been diverted away from genuine threats to whatever was being protected behind those sealed Epstein files. No one in that room expected him to go there, but he did, calmly, legally, relentlessly. Then came the moment that went viral, the one that left the committee speechless. Goldman read from the record. He cited the statute giving Congress the right to inspect detention facilities. Then he turned directly to the officials in charge, and to the silence coming from Bondi's office. You told the public you had the files, he said. You told them you would release them. What happened between then and now? No one answered. He pressed again. Why vote against transparency? Why block subpoenas? What are you protecting? Still silence. The only sounds were shuffling papers and deep breaths. That's when he laid down the subpoenas, tangible proof that someone still cared about accountability. In that moment, Goldman didn't just challenge individuals, he challenged the entire system that lets secrets live longer than justice. And beyond that committee room, millions of Americans were asking the same thing. If there's truly nothing to hide, why not show us? Why bury evidence from one of the darkest chapters in recent memory? There's been a lot of buzz online, some credible, some wild, but one thing remains certain: the files exist, they were promised, they were reviewed, and then, they vanished. Even some of the loudest voices from years ago now act like the files never mattered. But back then, they couldn't stop talking about them. Back then, transparency was the rallying cry. Now it's the risk. That shift, that quiet reversal, is what Goldman exposed. He didn't need conspiracy theories or outrage to make his point. The facts spoke for themselves: a promise made, a promise broken, and a silence that says more than any denial ever could. Behind every scandal in Washington, there's a pattern: noise when it's safe, silence when it's dangerous. And the Epstein case is the perfect mirror, because buried inside those sealed pages might not just be the names of predators, but the map of how power protects itself. From the outside the debate looks political, but at its core it's moral. If powerful people can decide which crimes the public gets to know about, then accountability becomes performance. Justice becomes theater. Goldman saw that. And he used his spotlight not to grandstand, but to remind the country why oversight exists in the first place. The moment the hearing ended, the headlines tried to bury it. Networks downplayed it. Some called it grandstanding. But the clip spoke for itself. You could see the discomfort on faces when he mentioned the files. You could see aides looking away when he referenced subpoenas. And maybe that's why his message hit so hard. Because beyond all the politics, one truth remains: justice can't coexist with secrecy. You can't claim to fight exploitation while hiding evidence of it. You can't wave the flag of transparency and then lock the door behind you. Goldman's move was more than political. It was symbolic. A subpoena is just a piece of paper until it's backed by courage. He knew that asking questions about those files would make enemies on both sides, but he did it anyway. Because some questions matter too much to bury. This wasn't just about names or scandals, it was about the fundamental idea that the truth should belong to the people, not to politicians, not to agencies, not to anyone who fears what might come out. And the message landed. Across social media, across independent news outlets, people began asking again, where are the files? Why were they sealed? Who made that decision? That spark of curiosity, that's how accountability begins. As the hearing footage spread, you could feel a shift. For the first time in years, the question wasn't whether the Epstein files existed. Everyone knows they do. The question was why, after all this time, the people who once promised exposure are now defending secrecy. Maybe it's fear of embarrassment, maybe it's politics, or maybe it's something darker, the realization that once those pages open, no one knows where the trail ends. Either way, Goldman's stand lit a fuse, and the silence that followed only made it louder. Because secrets have a strange property, the longer they stay hidden, the more powerful the truth becomes, once it breaks free. In the end, this story isn't about one hearing or one politician, it's about whether America can still handle the truth when it threatens the powerful. The Epstein files are more than paper, they're a test of whether justice is still blind, or whether it looks the other way when the names get too important. And maybe that's why they stay locked. Because if the files ever saw daylight, the question wouldn't just be who's in them, it would be who helped keep them secret. If you've made it this far, then you already know, silence protects power, but truth protects the people. So the next time someone tells you there's nothing to see here, remember, they said that before every major cover-up in history, and every time it turned out there was something to see. If you believe no one should be above the law, that justice should never be optional, and that truth should never stay locked behind politics, then do one thing right now, like this video, share it, and subscribe. Because justice doesn't happen in silence, it happens when we demand it, together.